morning and welcome to the October 26th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. Thank you for joining us in this remote meeting format we're using in response to Governor Brown's Stay Home, Save Lives order. This format enables the Planning Commission to meet, hear from the community, and take care of business while keeping its members, staff, and the public safe. Today, our meeting will begin with a public comment session, followed by work sessions on downtown urban renewal and growth monitoring. There are several housekeeping announcements and instructions related to the meeting format that I need to take care of first. Thank you for your patience while I work my way through them. Anyone wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by following the access instructions listed on the agenda for this meeting. For those who join the meeting via computer, device, or phone, your microphone, webcam, and phone are automatically muted when you enter the meeting as an attendee. If you wish to participate during the public comment portion of the meeting and haven't already done so, please raise your virtual hand now to join the speaker's queue in one of two ways. For those viewing the meeting on a computer, laptop, or other device, click once on the blue hand icon. For those listening to the meeting on a phone, press *9. When the public comment begins, our meeting moderator will announce the next two speakers at a time. When it's your turn, the moderator will announce your name and unmute your microphone. Public comment is limited to 10 minutes. So your time to speak will be based on the number of people signed up. Finally, I want to thank everyone again for your patience, flexibility, and good humor as we work within this new virtual meeting format. As always, feel free to contact the staff if there is testimony you were not able to provide or wish to get us in a different manner. Get us or get to us, either way. Terrific. So, having got through that, I will move on to agenda item A, which is the public comment session. Public comment is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the Planning Commission on any topics except for items scheduled for a public hearing or public hearing items for which the record has already closed. The Planning Commission reserves 10 minutes at the beginning of this meeting for public comments. Generally, the time limit for public comment is 3 minutes. However, the Planning Commission reserves the option to reduce the time allowed for each speaker based on the number of people requesting to speak. As a reminder, your hand must be raised in the queue for public comment. When it's your turn and your microphone has been unmuted by staff, please state your name clearly before beginning your comments. Staff will let you know when your time is up, and when your time has concluded, the moderator will mute your microphone and move on to the next speaker. So I got through that. And moderator, do we have anyone in our queue with their hands up who would like to speak during the public comment time?
We do not have anyone in the queue.
You do not have anyone in the queue, or anyone in the queue raising their hand, or any queue in any manner. And so with that, I think I've given it an appropriate amount of time for those probably trying to figure it out at this point. I will close the public comment. And my script says that I'm to ask for comments from the Planning Commission, but I believe that would be in response to comments that came from the public. So given that you'll have a lot of time for other comments, I think I'll move on to item B, which is a work session on the proposed amendment to the Downtown Urban Renewal Plan. And joining us today is Josh Berman. And Josh, there you are. And if you could introduce who else is here with you, that would be terrific.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Josh Berman. I'm in the Community Development Division as a Community Development Analyst. I'm joined by Will Dowdy and Amanda Noble-Flannery, also from Community Development, as well as Lauren Summers from the City Attorney's Office. There they are. Great. So I have a presentation, and is it okay to just get started?
Yes, I think that'd be terrific. Let
Okay.
it go.
So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully avoid the thing where things go sideways when you do Zoom. Can I get a visual thumbs up that you can see it? Okay, perfect. So welcome. Thank you for having me. My name is Josh Berman, like I said, and I'm here to talk about the Downtown Urban Renewal Plan Amendment. And I just want to ask that if you have any questions, just hold it till the end. We'll do our best to answer all of them, but I want to go through everything before taking questions. So here's just an overview of what the presentation will hold. First, I'll be talking about urban renewal in general. Then I will be giving details on the 2020 amendment. Then we'll jump to looking at the designs and details of the farmers market, right-of-way, and bathroom, and then going over our timeline and next steps. And so just as a reminder, before I really dig into it, we are here just to focus on the urban renewal plan and whether to move forward with an amendment to remove a spending cap on the farmers market project to allow for the full construction of the community vision for the farmers market. So I'll be showing some of the designs, but really we are just here to get your thoughts and recommendation on whether to move forward with this 2020 amendment. So some background for urban renewal. The city has had a downtown urban renewal district since 1968. You can see over here on the screen the map for the current boundaries. And so you can see Lincoln Street all the way to the west, 11th all the way to the south, and then it goes all the way out to High Street and to the east, and then to 6th Avenue to the north. So that's the area that we're talking about. The last time that the plan was amended was in 2016. And during that amendment, a few projects were added, so 4 specific projects. Improvements to the farmers market, improvements to the park blocks and open spaces in the district, redevelopment of 1059 Willamette, and the construction of a high-speed fiber network. And so we're here because of a request to have a type 2 amendment from council at a meeting that was held on June 22nd of 2020. So the specific 2020 amendment is fairly small in its scope. It removes the spending limit placed on the farmers market improvements within the 2016 plan. So in 2016, a $4.5 million cap was placed on the farmers market improvements. And that was made just as a very rough estimate before any community visioning was done and before the full scope of the project was set. In 2019, the city led a community visioning exercise and public outreach associated with the Town Square project. So that was looking at improvements to the farmers market as well as to the park blocks across the street, and also thinking about the site of a future city hall, which is separate from the urban renewal project. And so after that community scoping, we heard more about a desire for an expanded vision for the farmers market to include a pavilion that has more amenities and a nicer plaza. So the last cost estimate that we had during our schematic design was a $9.3 million project. So this is mostly because of the expanded scope from the 2016 initial estimate. So the 2020 amendment is really just to remove the spending cap on the farmers market. So it does away with that $4.5 million cap and allows for the farmers market to be eligible for a greater share of the urban renewal money that is set aside. To be clear, the 2020 amendment will not be increasing the overall spending limit for the urban renewal district. It also won't be adding or changing any projects that are in the plan currently. And it will not be making any alterations to the district boundary that you can see here. So here, I just want to jump in and orient us to the actual location of the farmers market. Hopefully, you've heard a good amount about the farmers market just through our community conversations. But just to get a little bit more specific, we are talking about the intersection of Oak Street and 8th Avenue. So Oak Street running north, and then 8th Avenue running west over here. The site is also surrounded by the park streets, and you can see the 2 park blocks, as well as the butterfly lot across the street, and the area in front of the butterfly lot where the farmers market currently meets on Saturdays. And so this crude drawing, I guess, shows the general areas of where the projects will be. Right now, we have the pavilion and plaza to be where the current butterfly lot is. So we'll be removing the butterfly lot as part of this project to make room for the pavilion and plaza. Then you can see with the red are the areas that we're looking at right-of-way improvements, as well as putting in a public bathroom in the southwest park block. The public outreach for this project came as part of the Town Square project. And we did that outreach in the spring and summer of 2019, when we could have gatherings like this where people could be close together. And during the outreach, we led 4 public events that had over 1,000 attendees. We got a lot of really great feedback, including over 2,500 responses to the 3 surveys that we ran. In addition to the general feedback, we also had many stakeholder meetings with the Lane County Farmers Market, this Saturday market, local businesses, artists, performers, and cultural groups. So for the farmers market designs, you can see the pavilion and plaza in a rendering on the screen. And so the pavilion itself is meant to be an indoor and outdoor space to allow the farmers market to run year round. So the openings that you can see in the picture are from sliding barn doors that can be open or closed. So in the nice months when it's warm, you can imagine a farmer's market that has a really good continuity between the pavilion and plaza. And then in the colder months and rainy months, we can shut those doors and have a purely indoor market. The expansion will grow the market from 70 to 140 vendors at peak season. And the improvements that have been identified will align with existing planning documents, including Envision Eugene, the downtown plan, and the climate action plan. Here are a few other views of the pavilion and plaza. This is a view from the southeast corner, looking at that expanded plaza area and pavilion. And then you can also see the interior view. I've included a few other renderings in your agenda packet that you can look through. So in addition to the pavilion and plaza, we're also looking to make right-of-way improvements to all of the streets surrounding the pavilion and plaza. So we have West Park Street over here. We're looking to do a full redo to make that a curbless environment to create greater continuity between the pavilion and the businesses across the street. We'll be doing some limited work on Oak Street and then reintroducing this area over here as North Park Street. And then separately from us, Public Works Engineering will be doing work on 8th Avenue as part of the Willamette to Willamette initiative. And that will be converting 8th Avenue from a one-way to two-way street, linking our downtown to the river. And lastly, the work that we're doing is also going to be introducing a public bathroom into the Southwest Park Block. We've already selected a bathroom model designed by Madden. It's known as the Portland Loo, which you can see over here. And that bathroom will be open to the public. So to wrap this up, I just want to give you a better idea of the timeline that we're working on. As I said earlier, we met with council and got direction to begin this amendment process in June of 2020. And then we have a few different options for public feedback. First, we have sent letters to overlapping taxing districts, including 4J, to get any comments that they have on the amendment. We also have a presentation to you all here at Planning Commission, and we look forward to getting your feedback. And then on November 16th, we have a public hearing that will happen. We'll be getting feedback from the public, excuse me. And then on November 23rd, council will meet again to review comments from this public feedback. And then on December 14th, we are looking at council action. So before we go into the discussion, I just want to give a reminder of why we're here, and just mentioning that this is just to discuss removing the spending cap on the farmers market project as part of the urban renewal plan. So again, this won't be changing the overall plan itself, but just to focus on this farmers market. So I have provided the options here for you all in relation to the motion and recommendation that we gave to you in your packet. And I'm happy to take any questions that you have now.
Great, thank you, Josh. That was a helpful overview, and I certainly enjoy the imagery and look forward to an amazingly revitalized and expanded market downtown. So it's fun to see those designs, and I know our scope today is limited to just reviewing and making a recommendation about the amendment itself. So with that, are there comments or questions from the commissioners? Or any other kind of discussion? I see Commissioner Borofsky.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. This is an item that I'm fairly familiar with my work at the Budget Committee as well as other agencies. So I did have a few questions regarding the financing going forward, and I'm a little sad that there's nobody from finance here. But one of the things that I'm hoping to put forward as a planning commissioner here is our commitment to trying to increase housing downtown. So one of the things that I was concerned about was the amount of money that is being dedicated to 1059 and that project there, with the hopes of getting that fully implemented. In the original plan amendment from 2016, 1059 Willamette was set to be allocated up to $6 million. In this plan amendment, which again, I am all for the farmers market and the vision that is being presented before us today. But again, as planning commissioners, I think it's our duty to help fund and create housing of all kinds, especially affordable type housings. In this plan, there is approximately $7 $100,000 of the $6 million being allocated to 1059. So when it comes time to make a motion, I'm going to put a motion forward that may amend that. There, in my view, are a couple of different ways to go forward as far as getting more funding for 1059. There's a small percentage of money that's left over for open spaces, approximately $400,000. Right now, that is unclear where that's going, but there's been talk of the Health Center Plaza needs updoing, and as well as some of the park blocks. For me, in these times where our housing crisis is, as everybody at this table knows, is quite intense, I would hope that we could allocate that money towards 1059 rather than beautifying the Health Center Plaza, although that's a worthwhile project. I think that the needs of the community could be better served by putting that money towards improving housing in the downtown area. And then the other concerns I had were kind of financial. Again, and this is something that I've brought up to City Council and budget process. One of the concerns that I have about the Urban Renewal Agency and the document that was placed in front of us today is the fact that of the $19.2 million that was approved in the 2016 plan, 4.2 of that went to administration. Almost 22% of the money went to administrative costs. That to me seems kind of high. It's been explained a few times, but I still, every time I see it, I need to bring it up. Ken can back me up that he's heard that before, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. When it does come time to make a motion, I do have one that is suggested, and I would love to speak to it if I get a second. Thank you.
Commissioner Fragola.
Thank you. I'm in support of this amendment. I feel like there was incredibly robust community input around the plan for both the Farmers Market Pavilion and the park blocks. I think there's an incredible amount of enthusiasm on the part of the community. Hopefully by the time this is built, we won't still be having to socially distance, but wouldn't it be nice to have an indoor-outdoor space at this time in our current social dilemma? And I've also read economic impact studies on the Olympia Farmers Market, which the economic impact attributed to the Olympia Farmers Market is increased revenue in the city of Olympia as a major economic driver. People come from all over the region to go to that farmers market. So investing these dollars in the farmers market in the Park Blocks region is investing in our local economy. And I think that's really critical right now. So I'm very supportive of this amendment. I'm hesitant to vote on any other amendments to the renewal plan, downtown urban renewal plan, because I feel like I don't have enough information at this time. And I would want more information from staff about what's being proposed. Thanks.
Thank you. I have Commissioner Beeson followed by Commissioner Isaacson.
Thanks. I'm also in support of approving this. I'm in support of approving a recommendation that back to the council that they approve this amendment. And I'm thinking it's good. My opinion is good for us to stay. What we're being asked here, I think, is pretty focused. In terms of the request coming from staff, this we've got these projects that were put into the plan back in 2016, and they were set with some estimates. Things have evolved since then, as the staff described, and we're in a position now with the farmers market. They want to remove the cap on that to allow that funding, tax increment funding, to be used. That whole process, I think, on the design of the market, the review of all that is kind of handled under the auspices of the Urban Renewal Agency or the council. That's kind of a process that's ongoing and evolving, and it's necessary right now at this point in time for an amendment to be made to allow them to go ahead and use that financing. So it feels pretty focused to me. And I think, and I'd also want to have maybe a little clarification from Josh, but or the other staff, you know, this process, as we do this, then the council is going to have a public hearing in November. They're going to review this again and make a decision in December on the amendment. In addition to that, the process of the design and the final decision on the farmers market would proceed, I guess, out into next year, where there's a decision made on construction. And I guess I just kind of want to confirm that. That's really our focus is on the amendment, and the council decision in December is also focused on the amendment.
Yeah, that is correct. And council will have a separate opportunity to weigh in on whether to actually move forward with the construction of the pavilion and plaza, and that will be a separate decision. This is just allowing them to actually make that decision by removing the cap.
And so there's kind of ongoing public process that goes on, opportunity for public input on that as they go forward to make any final decision, right?
Well, do you have anything to add there?
Sure, I can add to that. Yeah, the council is making kind of a single decision in a drawn out fashion due to the nature of the funds involved. And so in July, they told us to move forward with the project. Kind of it was a direction that was, I guess you would say, for the concept. So it was the way that you might, you make a decision where you're choosing to do something. They said move forward with that. And then they allocated funds that were available in a recent budget decision. But throughout all of this, they've recognized that the funding source that they want to use, which is urban renewal, doesn't have enough funds, has this limitation on how many funds they can use, or to what extent they can use the funds. So then they started a process to remove that limitation and allow the project to be fully funded with urban renewal. And that's the process they're going through now. When this process wraps up, assuming, or if we assume that it ends up with a decision to unlock the remaining funds or to remove the limitation of funds, then there will be one last budget process that would be necessary to do a budget action to move the funds into the spending column. So it was a decision in July, then it was a first budget action to open up some of the funds. Then there's this amendment process to take care of the urban renewal legal component. And then there's a necessary final step to take the budget action that kind of follows on the decision that is in front of you today. Was that clear at all?
No, that helps. Thanks. I guess I want to make one additional comment real quickly. In response to Commissioner Borofsky and the idea of an additional amendment or consideration of that, I think I'm kind of in the same place that Commissioner Fragile is. I think, as I've said, I think we're pretty focused on this today, and I don't feel we've really got enough information to be considering or looking at any additional amendments to this. So, thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna move us on to Commissioner Isaacson here with Commissioner Taylor up next in line, and then I want to be sure we circle back and have the staff address Commissioner Borofsky's ideas. But let's get through our queue and then we'll circle back to that. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm also in favor of the amendment. I think that downtown has always had a kind of a storied history of trying to draw business to it, and the businesses who have established there have had a rather difficult time both drawing people in and advertising. And so there are programs that do a good job of drawing people in, the farmers market being one of them, and ways we can improve on that and grow that base only will spill over into other businesses and hopefully draw people into the Broadway area and to other businesses that are kind of a few blocks away that will ultimately benefit everyone involved. So I'm also in favor of it. I agree with Commissioner Frekla on the need to kind of hold up on until we have more information on additional amendments.
Commissioner Taylor.
Thank you. I'm on two different devices because I didn't get home. So without spending a lot of airtime, I just wanted to reiterate essentially what Commissioner Fragola said. So I'm definitely in support, have followed the process closely, appreciate the public involvement over the years. And I just don't feel like I would have enough information to really entertain an amendment that Commissioner Borofsky is talking about. But I look forward to hearing from staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Commissioner Edwards, did you want to weigh in on this round? And then it's okay if you don't.
No, that's great. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm kind of with the majority of commission. I definitely hear Commissioner Borofsky, and I agree with your points. I just don't know what an amendment would look like. And I feel like I would need more information. I wish I had the bulk of the breadth of knowledge that you have about the budget to really kind of understand all that. But for me personally, I think that I would need to understand the economic impact to investing dollars into the Holt Center versus investing those dollars into housing in the downtown area. So I think that to me, that's where I'd really be struggling to figure out where those dollars are best put to use. Obviously, COVID has really kind of changed the way that we're doing things right now. And so the thought of, obviously I would think that there may be a need for the Holt Center to do some retrofitting and to do some modifications and things like that. So I don't want to be, I want to acknowledge that, but I also, definitely think that getting housing in downtown is a really big priority of mine personally. So I tend to agree with the majority of the commission on this one as well, though.
Okay, great, thank you. So Commissioner Borofsky, get to you in a second, then we'll go to the staff, just so I can weigh in here for a second. For me, this is an issue that really resides with the City Council at the level of detail I think we're approaching. So our job is pretty narrowly focused here, and I'm okay with what we're doing, but I did want to understand conceptually, what is the amount of money that's available, and how does this action either negatively or positively affect the amount of money that might be available for housing downtown at some future date, if that's even a reasonable question. If staff could think about that. But secondarily, I think it might also be possible for us to go forward with a recommendation while at the same time adding some kind of note or concern about the idea of addressing housing as the rest of the funds are allocated in the future. So with that, Commissioner Borofsky, can you maybe sum up what you've heard so far, and then we'll let the staff take a swing at what we're doing here?
Thank you, Chair Ramey. Yes, the and I put forward in the chat box kind of what my thoughts were on this. I'm not making a change to the amendment. We would be making a recommendation to the City Council to consider the rest of the funding, still fund the farmers market to the full extent that was presented here before, but also consider using the excess available money. And again, just consider, not directing them to do anything like that, but consider that the possibility of using the extra $400,000 to help bring along the 1059 Willamette project for housing downtown. And the reason I did that was kind of going back to what is in our charge, and that's in the first paragraph of my thing. In accordance with our duties as stated in Chapter 2, to recommend and make suggestions to the council on matters of development and beautification of the municipality, betterment of housing, and providing adequate supply of housing for low-income families. We move this thing forward with just them to think about that part of the equation of housing and beautification of the city in consideration of the rest of the money. It's not saying that we are going to direct you to spend that money. It's not saying anything. We are giving a recommendation to the city council, and me personally as a planning director or planning commissioner, with housing being my top priority, that is something that I would like to see the commission move forward. If the rest of the commission doesn't feel that way, or it doesn't feel they have enough information, I totally understand that. I just wanted to put this out there as a form of a recommendation to the city council. I'm 100% behind the whole plan with the bathroom and with the design for the farmer's market. This would in no way jeopardize that. It would just say, with the rest of the money that you have left over, please consider housing as your priority coming from the Planning Commission.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Commissioner Borowski. That I think is very helpful. I see Lauren Summers, you've been patiently waiting with your hand up. So maybe you can start off the sort of staff response to where we are. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Amy. I just thought it might be helpful to kind of quickly go back through the process and where we are now. So I will maybe ask Amanda and or Josh to weigh in on this, but the plan amendment that was initiated by the City Council in July was specific to removing the cap from the farmers market. And so that was the direction that staff was given, and that's what is before you today. The urban renewal statutes require that the plan amendments and the accompanying report come to the Planning Commission, and that you provide a recommendation on those two documents to the City Council. So that's kind of the have to today. Commissioner Borowski's suggestion is certainly something that the Planning Commission could do. You're not limited in your recommendation to what is before you. We're asking for a recommendation on that. If the Planning Commission as a body is interested in making additional recommendations to the City Council, there's nothing that would prevent you from doing that. So just to kind of hopefully help put all that in perspective.
Thank you. That's helpful. And then a couple comments from the staff that are here with us. What do you guys think? I'm looking at Josh or Amanda.
Well, I can jump in with a little bit about the projects and about the decision process. There's a few different things were mentioned, and I can just let you know how they all weigh in. There's the money that somebody mentioned, the money that, basically if we didn't move forward with this farmers market project, or what this farmers market project in relation to what are the other opportunities. And so one thing that could happen, and this would be either part of recommending against this motion or recommending a modified motion, would be to say this is too much money for the farmers market, and we want to dedicate some of it to be we want to push some of this towards housing or 1059 Willamette or some other project. And so it's likely that we wouldn't be able to do the farmers market as planned. We would not be able to do the farmers market as planned if the funds were reduced, but that would be one option that you could take to put a greater emphasis on housing. The next thing you could do, and this is, I think, more in line with what Commissioner Borowski is describing, would be to take there's money after the farmers market was chosen and the amount of money was picked. Then council went through another process where they picked $700,000 for 1059 Willamette, and as Commissioner Borowski mentioned, $400,000 was allocated or reserved to be used for open space. And so, and the Health Center Plaza was the item that was talked about for that. So one of the things that could be done is that you could recommend to council that they push that money into for housing. What you should know about that process, in order to spend that money on, well, really on anything at this point, anything related to open space, the Urban Renewal Agency or the City Council will need to have a public hearing and have discussion about what the plan is for that. So it's not going straight into, decisions haven't been made that will send that straight into any project, but there will have to be a process and a public process in order to spend that on something like the Health Center. So one option that you could have if you chose not to act now is that you could always make a recommendation later as part of that public process that money not go in towards any kind of open space project. One thing I can say about the initiative or the interest around the Health Center has been as much about that as a corridor connecting the core of downtown to lots of things happening north of 6th Avenue. And so I think as planning commissioners, that may be of interest, that it's not strictly about beautification, but it's about connection and integrating one part of a neighborhood with another part of a neighborhood and the value that brings for economics and housing opportunities. And then I think the third area for you also is that urban renewal is a tool that's always at the council's, it's always in the council's toolbox. And so one of the things that you could do is make a recommendation that council look beyond this current set of projects and think about ways to use urban renewal as a tool going forward to invest in housing. And so that would be a more general recommendation, but also could be something that you could do.
Okay, terrific, thank you. Yes, Lauren Summers.
Thank you, Chair Amy. I just wanted to elaborate on Will's comments a little bit because I know in my mind, sometimes I get things a little bit conflated and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of steps and the decisions that you're being asked to make today. So what the plan amendment will do is to remove a cap of $4.5 million that is currently in place for spending of tax increment funds on the farmers market. So today, without a plan amendment, the agency cannot spend more than $4.5 million on the farmers market project. Removing the cap doesn't guarantee that the agency will spend more than $4.5 million on the farmers market project. That is a separate decision. All that the plan amendment does is to allow that spending if that's something that the agency chooses to do. Based on previous conversations, it sounds like that is something the agency will choose to do, and that they are inclined to fully fund the farmers market. But all the plan amendment does is remove the cap. So those are two separate pieces that are combined in a lot of discussions. But today, all you're doing is saying, you know, we like the idea of removing the cap, or we don't like the idea of removing the cap. And then certainly there will be more discussions down the road about how much money will be spent, what it will be spent on, et cetera. So I just wanted to be clear again that when you're considering a motion to recommend approval or not approval of the plan, what we're talking about is removing the cap. Then you could also make additional recommendations about, you know, how urban renewal funds, Planning Commission would like to see them spent, other plan amendments the Planning Commission might like to see, you know, other kind of priorities for urban renewal that the Planning Commission might like to see. So I just wanted to be kind of clear in my own mind, and hopefully we're all clear about what the amendment does, and then other types of recommendations that you may wish to add.
Okay, thank you. I have Commissioner Fragola in the queue, followed by Commissioner Beeson.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion, and I'd like to make a motion that We recommend that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to the City Council to adopt the proposed planned amendment and the accompanying report.
Is there a second for that? I see Commissioner Taylor has seconded that motion. Thank you. I know we're in the discussion. You want to
may I speak to my motion?
Please, please.
Thank you. And, you know, just to clarify, we now have a motion on the table. That doesn't mean discussion is terminated. I'd like to see us make the recommendation that is on our agenda to City Council, since it sounds like we're all in agreement that this is a great project and would like to see it move forward. And so I'd like to see that motion moved. I'd like to acknowledge that Commissioner Borofsky has brought up some fabulous ideas. I would like for the Planning Commission to look at this potentially at another planning meeting, because I personally, I do feel uninformed about some of the things we're talking about. And I also am, I don't know if this sounds weird to say, but I'm really looking forward to the growth monitoring presentation. And so I also want to make sure we have enough time for that. I'm really interested in that as well. I'm also interested in hearing more about what, how we could prioritize investing in housing downtown. So I wanted to appreciate Commissioner Borofsky for his thinking. Okay.
Commissioner Beeson.
So I want to speak in support of the motion too. I want to be brief. I agree with what Commissioner Fraggle just said. The piece I guess I want to add, I talked a few weeks ago about the idea during the retreat, I think was kind of what was suggested, that we spend some time in a more formal way addressing some of the things that Commissioner Borofsky has raised, this being one. That whole area in our in the code about what our duties are. I would be a lot more comfortable doing it kind of in that venue and having some time for all of us to talk. And at that point, if we choose to forward recommendation to the council, we could. But so I'm in favor of the motion as it's presented at this point. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Beeson. I've got Commissioner Borofsky in the queue, but before I get to that, just add my 2 cents in here. I think what I'm sensing is that we can deal with today's issue, and there's plenty of time to advocate for additional ways of allocating urban renewal funds in the future, and that maybe a more concerted or coordinated effort might be appropriate. But having said that, yes, Commissioner Borofsky.
Thank you. I would just like to say that, hold on, my phone's ringing here. The motion that I put forward the intended motion that I was going to put forward would do what Commissioner Fraggle's motion did. It would move the plan forward. The Planning Commission would want to remove the cap. That's what it said. It just also said that we, as a Planning Commission, are interested in housing downtown and looking at alternatives to help fund housing downtown. Now, I can obviously count votes and see where things are going, but I just wanted to know that this is an opportunity for the Planning Commission to give a recommendation to the City Council about priorities. And I was just hoping that that was something that would happen today. So thank you.
Thank you. I do want to interject here a little bit, and I don't know if staff has this ability, but often when staff brings these agenda items forward, they will mention what came up in conversation and discussion. I don't know if that's appropriate in this case, but I certainly think that would be short of a formal motion, but may indeed portray our wishes to the council at that point. Yes, Lauren Summers.
Thank you again, Jeremy. I appreciate all the opportunities to weigh in this afternoon. I just wanted to clarify kind of further opportunities Planning Commission may have to weigh in on this particular plan amendment and or other things. So as I think Josh previously mentioned, or maybe it was Will, I apologize. There is a public hearing in front of council on this plan amendment So certainly individual planning commissioners could participate in that in their individual capacity, or if, if the planning commission wanted to make an additional recommendation as a body and had a meeting available to do that prior to the public hearing, that could happen. And then sort of beyond this particular plan amendment, I don't know the timing of, I think Will did talk about this, but I didn't retain it, the timing about specific budget decisions and in terms of spending the money on this project. But there is, no particular limit as far as I know about a planning commission recommendation generally to the council about priorities, other urban renewal plan amendments that you might recommend, other expansions, or whatever it is that planning commission might want to talk to council about in terms of urban renewal and how that works downtown. That all would be sort of outside of a formal process, though. Other than this step of the plan amendment process, planning commission is not required to participate in other urban renewal processes. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to move us forward to a vote now. We have a seconded motion on the table, and I'm going to ask for those commissioners who want to vote in favor of this motion to raise your hand, just so we can see it on the screen, I think. So I do count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favor, which, if I'm remembering my math correctly, is a unanimous vote. So having done that, I believe it's appropriate to move us on to the next agenda item. The next agenda item is, a work session on growth monitoring and a program update on the growth monitoring program. And we're joined today by Heather O'Donnell. Heather, do you want to start us off and introduce others who may be here to help you?
Sure. Thank you, commissioners. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, thumbs up. All right, great. So good afternoon, commissioners and those watching on the web. I'm Heather O'Donnell. I'm a senior planner in the planning division. And as you'll hear, while there are a lot of folks in both planning and development and our IT staff that are working on our teams with this project, there are a few of us here today, and we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. So my role is the project manager of the program on the planning and development side. So I'm really assisting with what the planning business needs are for the monitoring system that we're trying to set up. And with me today are Mina Roth, who will also be co-presenting, as well as Mike Garner, and I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves now. Oh, Mina, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. My name is Mina Roth. I'm the IT project manager for this project. My role is to oversee the development of the technical components of this program.
And hi, I'm Mike Garner. I am the Planning and Development Department's Tech Services Manager, and I'm one of the software developers involved with this project.
Great, thank you. And Elena is, because a couple of us are presenting, she's going to help us by moving through the slides. So if you can go ahead and share the presentation, that would be great. Great, thank you. And we'll just move right into the next slide. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about the goals for this presentation. One of them is just raising awareness of the program. It's been a while since we've been back to you to talk about the program. I think it was 2018. And then before that, I think it was 2015. So it's kind of every couple of years. So just bringing that awareness up for you in the community about the program. We're still working on it. Get you prepared, give you some background. I know that some of you are pretty familiar with the program, and then others of you are new to the commission. And so we want to give you some background and prepare you with just kind of a program overview before we actually give you results of the program in 2021. And we also want to make sure you understand connections to other urban growth boundary related projects that planning is working on, and some state rules around urban growth boundary planning and what the connections are to growth monitoring. So next slide. So our agenda, we'll start out with what the importance of the program is and some synergy that we're trying to leverage at this time. High level program overview. Like I said, relationships to other urban growth boundary related projects and state rules. We'll dive a little deeper and go into the program components, some of the limitations and challenges that we've been seeing and anticipate seeing in the future. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So similar to your first agenda item, if we could get through the presentation and save our questions for end, that would be great. I'd also like to just start off with a little gratitude for our cross-department team. So you'll hear more about this, but the program really requires a truly collaborative approach. We're marrying planning and technology. I can't stress enough how invaluable this has been. You've met myself, Mina, and Mike. We've got several other planners, Thea, Chelsea, who is now mostly working on River Road, Santa Clara. Elena and Zoli are helping. And then we have IT staff, Teresa, Joel, Lee, Debbie, Samantha, and there have been a couple others as well that have been helping to put all of this together to help make it successful. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. Next slide. And I am also going to stop sharing my video if you don't mind, because I'm using two screens, so it's a little bit distracting. All right, so why is growth monitoring important? I'm excited to hear that some of you are excited to hear about this agenda topic. That's great. Not everyone wants to talk about data. But what we found when we were doing our urban growth boundary analysis that basically took us about 10 years to do is that we had a lot of data in some areas and around development, and then in other areas we really didn't have a lot of data, or we had data but it wasn't collected in the way that we really needed it or wanted it. So some of you have heard me use the fruit analogy, which is that our community usually likes information at the kumquat level. And really, when we were doing the UGB analysis, we had a lot of data that was more at the watermelon, and if we were lucky, maybe it was at the orange level. But we definitely like to dig in this community, and we really didn't have the information that way. So we used the best available information that we had with the agreement with the community that we would create an ongoing monitoring system that reports, does a comprehensive report check-in every 5 years to evaluate the strategies or the effectiveness of the strategies that we were adopting with Envision Eugene, and then determine whether or not, based on those results, if the comprehensive plan or any of the implementation tools that we're using need to be adjusted because our trends are changing and they're different than we thought they were going to be. We also would be doing an annual review that is basically on key data or development trends. So that was a commitment to the community that the council agreed with and provided direction that we would establish this program. You'll see that in the comprehensive plan policies that we attached to your packet. And that the first growth monitoring report would, comprehensive report would actually be in 2021. Next slide. So at this point, now and actually through Envision Eugene, we realized that There's a lot of synergy with the planning that we're doing throughout the community, as well as within the city organization itself. So there is quite a bit of overlap between the work that we're doing. You know, a lot of our programs are looking at people, or they're focusing on housing. You were just talking about some of those issues earlier, jobs, the environment. So with Envision Eugene, it touched on all of those areas. And so we're actually, with the growth monitoring program, we're actually proposing to collect data in all of those areas. And that can provide a foundation for other divisions to use the same data. Some of those examples are the climate action plan. Hopefully they'll be able to use some of our land use trend data to help with their work. So we're not doubling efforts. Transportation planning, obviously we are always coordinating with transportation planning, and they can be interested in things like housing and jobs along corridors and what is that doing or could do to our infrastructure. And then the housing consolidated plan. We actually did, the census data was one of the early bits of the program that we focused on collecting. And so we were actually able to provide that data to community development. And then more recently, resiliency and economic recovery. So we are collecting data on jobs, income, housing costs. And so that information can actually help with the economic recovery efforts that we're in right now. And then smart cities. So that smart cities is a concept of essentially using data and technology towards more efficient running of a city. And so our program is intended to help provide data, get quality control on the data, and allow us to do data-driven decisions as an organization and a community. It will help us, as I just mentioned earlier, operate more efficiently in our planning efforts across the city, and also help us provide more efficient public services and even public to the community, or data to the community. And then the triple bottom line, you know, all of those topic areas that we just talked about or that I just mentioned are things that are involved in your triple bottom line analysis. So we're hoping that the data we're collecting can help folks with that review. Next slide. So high level program overview. I think of the program as kind of these three key areas that have components within each of them. So what we've currently been focusing on is the quantitative collection component of the program, numbers of people, numbers of housing units, numbers of jobs, how much land is being developed. And so what you do is we're putting together a database system to collect all of that information, and you can kind of see that on the graphic over there. Collect the information, report the results, compare the assumptions to the results that you're getting, and then adjust your strategies if needed. So that's the database system that we're talking about from that respect. We also are looking at putting that data in a community dashboard. So we're not just dumping data onto the web, but we're actually putting it in a format that's digestible for the public. Setting up an Envision Eugene Technical Advisory Committee that can really dig into the data. They're already meeting now. You've got 2 planning commissioners that are on the committee, Commissioners Borofsky and Commissioner Edwards. And we also have a sustainability commissioner, and City Councilor Jennifer Ye is on it as well. So there's actually 13 members right now. And then after staff and the technical advisory committee have been kind of vetting the results, and right now we're really just setting up the program, the Planning Commission plays an important role of reviewing that work and providing a recommendation to City Council about what those results say. And City Council can give us direction on if they're ready for us to start a new urban growth boundary review. The next big component that we haven't really focused too much on yet, because the quantitative part is taking enough time right now, is the qualitative assessment. So we may know how many housing units we're getting downtown. Are they compatible? Are they creating a walkable environment? Those kind of livability indicators. So that's a really exciting area. There has been a little bit of research on that. We're hoping to do more and flesh that out with you all more when we're ready to start work on that part. And then, like any good monitoring effort, we have to monitor ourselves. So we will be evaluating the program, making sure that the data is still coming in right. Do we need different data? Do we need different charts, and adjusting as we go? So next slide. I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about how the program fits in with other urban growth boundary related projects. At the forefront right now is urban reserves, and we've been using this graphic to illustrate how the two how the Urban Reserves Project and the Growth Monitoring Program work together. The Growth Monitoring Program is a cycle, as I mentioned before. You see that on the left with collecting data, reporting results, comparing assumptions, what we assumed to the results we're getting, and then adjusting the strategies if needed. So every 5 years is when we're doing that kind of comprehensive review, but then annually we'll do a check-in on kind of key indicators. And what that graphic is showing is that if we are growing faster than we anticipate, then we can move into the purple box, which is a new urban growth boundary analysis. And so that is doing a little bit more comprehensive review about what it would really take to meet our 20-year need. And if we don't have enough land, which is presumably why we'd be doing the urban growth boundary analysis, a new one, that's when we start talking about efficiency measures and development incentives, the lower teal bubble there. And this is the one that people are really interested in because we get this question a lot in both urban reserves and in growth monitoring. When are we going to talk about how we can grow differently? And that's the policy discussion where there's a lot of interest in those compact development strategies. Here's the point in where those conversations would happen. And if we still don't have enough land to meet our 20-year need with using efficiency measures, then we look at UGB expansion. And at that, before we do our growth monitoring report, urban reserves should be initiated and close to being in place. And so when we get to the point that we need to expand, we would look at those urban reserve areas and that have already been adopted and figure out how much of that urban reserve area is needed, what slice of that pie is needed. And then that's what gets added on to our future urban growth boundary. So that's how that works. And just to show you on the next slide, what does that look like from a timeline perspective? So most of you know that urban reserves is in process and is being the urban reserve options for how big of an urban reserve we want to initiate adoption for is being considered by City Council and the Board of County Commissioners this fall. City Council has already weighed in last week. So after we get that direction about which way to go, we will work on initiating that option. And so that's anticipated for spring, summer of 2021. Sometime after that, because everything's taking longer than we anticipate it to do, we'll be bringing a growth monitoring report to you and then to council, and then looking for council to give us direction on those results and whether or not we should go into or when we should start the new UGB analysis. I think one of the things that is new with the state rules is we have to look at how House Bill 2001 provisions fit in when we have a new code, just like when we have a new code for the clear and objective work. Those new assumptions where we have good data for them can fit into our UGB analysis. And excuse me, the key here that is also new is that the state is now requiring us to do a new housing needs assessment, which is one portion of our UGB analysis by December of 2026. So we actually have a deadline now where we didn't have one of those before. So that's important to keep in mind, because even though 2026 seems far away, it's not when you're considering that you need to have your housing needs assessment, you need to know what efficiency measures or housing production strategies you're going to be using, and whether or not you need to expand the urban growth boundary. And that all needs to be done by December of 2026. So there's some urgency with getting urban reserves and growth monitoring in place so that we have a good foundation for that UGB analysis. So I am going to turn it over to Mina for this slide.
Thanks, Heather. So as Heather described, there are so many facets to this program, and it requires a lot of deep understanding and attention to detail by every member of our team in the calculations and the data and how it all flows together. As she mentioned, we're cross-departmental, and we really are marrying planning with technology. Each of the team members comes to the table with their areas of expertise, and we are all collectively involved in each stage of development to make sure that the business needs are met using technical solutions that make sense. We've approached this project with joint ownership and with an iterative and collaborative style to ensure accuracy and flow of the data and processes. So every member of the team has been involved in the testing of the software and the data validation process. That was really important to all of us to ensure trust and confidence in each piece of this program. Next slide, I'll have Heather walk you through the components of the program.
Great. So now we're going to get into some of the details. So this is an animated graphic that builds on itself. So I'm just going to talk about each component. So this first graphic is showing some of the different data sources that we are pulling data into the growth monitoring system. So you see everything from local data, Eugene building permit data, and the buildable lands inventory. That's our vacant and partially vacant or underdeveloped land supply. How much buildable land do we have? All the way up to the census data. There's state jobs data, population growth data. These are all from different sources, and they're at different levels. And so as you can imagine, none of them talk to each other. They're siloed. And so anytime we want to bring this information together, like we had to do for the urban growth boundary analysis, and like we will have to do again, and if we want to do it on a regular basis, which has been our charge, we needed to come up with a system that would allow us to do that. So basically bringing these components together, as well as some other ones that you'll see, and also creates a kind of an automated system for doing this to the degree that we can. So the next components that are going to show up in light blue, Mina is going to talk a little bit more about those, but essentially they are important components that we had to develop that would help us look at a development site and how it develops over time, and not just look at individual buildings. So as planning commissioners, you understand the concept of a project site that has multiple buildings on it. Our building permit system doesn't. It just looks at individual buildings. And so if we want to get density for the whole site, we needed a system to be able to get that larger, capture that larger zoning development standard analysis. And then the spatial component there is really bringing in mapping. And so Mina is going to show some examples of that. So the next component that you will see is, again, like I mentioned, we really did not have a system for getting land use and zoning review data at the time of building permit. So getting density in real time, getting buildable lands inventory information in as close to real time as we can get it. But you know, to be able to answer those questions of how many dwelling units were built on vacant land at the end of the year, and is that what we expected? We really had to build some additional systems to make that work. And then our land use application system, again, similarly, just needing to collect more data around land use applications so we can see how quickly our land is being divided for housing. So the next component is the data warehouse. And this is important because what this does is it takes copies of each of these components of data, puts them in the data warehouse, and then allows that data to mingle together. That's my non-technical description of what it does. And what's great about that, especially with the spatial component, is that you can start to see what I was just talking about. Number of dwelling units on what type of land and what plan designation is it happening on. The magic happens in this data warehouse. It mingles it together and allows for that commingled reporting. So next component is data and images. So it's great to have all that information in there, but it's a lot of data. And in order to be able to report on this regularly, we needed to set up a system that would allow us to basically have chart and graphic templates so that the data just gets populated on an annual basis or whenever it's available. And the charts are already made and we don't have to focus on those or redevelop them every year. And then there's consistency with the graphics and the structure, the format of all of the charts. And so we purchased Tableau, which is an industry leader on kind of big data visualization. And that will help us with a future component. If you go to the next slide, those charts will go into the reports for City Council that you'll be seeing. And those charts will also, Tableau is a good program to help us put data in a digestible format in what I'm calling a data dashboard on our website. So if any of you have looked at the budget and you're familiar with how that's the platform that's used on the web for that, that's not Tableau, but it's a similar idea of having topic areas that the data is being put out on. Okay, so now I'm gonna, oh yeah, and then future databases, I kind of forget about this because this work has taken so much, but of course we're developing it in a way that we can add more data as needed. So I'll turn it over to Mina to dive a little deeper.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So we have had to develop several applications, as Heather mentioned, to support some of the main components of the project. Because there were some fundamental issues the team identified when the project began. We were missing the ability to collect some pivotal data, and there was other data in legacy systems where their file formats couldn't be easily incorporated. So we built several applications to solve these problems. First, we needed to be able to track tax lots over time. Since tax lots get renumbered when they're subdivided, there was no link between parent and child tax lots. So our team developed a means to track a given area over time using spatial layers. As an example, you can see this blue outlined area on the slide. That was the parent lot. And then the white lines indicate the newly subdivided lots, and the white dots indicate the building permits. So we're now able to link those parent and child lots together so we can view that development over a time frame. And then secondly, in order to get accurate housing density, we needed to be able to collect data over an entire development site. So we developed an application that groups associated building permits together. As Heather indicated, currently we can only see one building permit at a time in our building permit system, but now we're able to group them together. To show you an example, on the bottom right of this map shown on the slide, you can see two adjacent lots on the bottom right. One tax lot indicates it has 5 building permits. So there are 5 building permits on that one lot, and the adjacent lot has 6. So previously we had a limited ability to speak to the development that was happening on that full development site, if we want to call those 2 tax lots a development site for this example. And so now we can tie those building permits together to create a much clearer picture. In addition, we built a web application for the community development team to track incentives. So we can cross-reference their project sites with building permits and integrate this data into our land use web application and into the data visualizations. So with those 3 applications, the spatial component, the development site application, and the community development one, we put that information into our land use web application, which is one of the major components that we have developed. We spent a significant amount of time designing that system to gather data for the land use analysts to do their work, which is currently a very manual process. So we've automated many calculations and lookups, which makes the process more efficient and reduces manual error of data input. It also was designed to compile the land use analysis with other data sources like the buildable lands inventory and community development programs to provide a more holistic view of development for our planning staff to report on. So this land use application is still in testing. Next steps include finalizing the web application, reviewing backfilled permit data, and developing charts for the planning staff and ETAC to review. And I'll turn it over to Heather to show off some of the visualizations.
Yeah, so next what's going to pop up is a couple examples. I think we have 4. The first one, so these will be different examples of the different types of data and also the different types of charts that we're putting together. You'll see some similarities with color, the format, the font. I have talked about how I feel like this program is building a house where they say that you make 10,000 decisions, including what types of nails to buy. We are making 10,000 decisions, including what should be on the XY axis, what font everything should be in, color, all sorts of things. And this is what the ETAC has really been focused on right now are the charts that we put together so far communicating the information in a clear way for the community, and is there anything missing? So this example, the other thing I want to say, you see that it says examples only. This one's actually been reviewed by the ETAC, but as we get further into the building permit data and land, buildable lands inventory charts, those have not been reviewed, and the data is test data. I just wanted to be able to show you some charts. So those are not accurate. But this is a good example of a line graph and the ability to overlay actual population trends with what we assumed in our forecast with the adoption of the urban growth boundary, and then trend data as far over a longer period of time. So next slide. This one, we're relying a lot on bar charts and averages over periods of time. So this is a good example of job data and showing you what the growth has looked like during the monitoring period for the years that we have data available, compared to what the growth was anticipated to be over a 20-year period. So that's some of the challenges, right, that we're looking at is the monitoring period is still relatively short compared to the averages that we adopted for over a 20-year period. But that's a good one to highlight here. Also that we're able to compare ourselves to other jurisdictions where it's important or interesting to do that. Next slide. And this is this data is not accurate reminder. So what you're seeing here is test data about the number of dwellings that we're seeing over the monitoring period. The darker orange is how many we've seen from those efficiency measures or compact development strategies that we adopted in Envision Eugene. And then also, so those are in the bars, but then the lines are showing you what the average to date is for efficiency measured dwellings versus the average that we anticipated to see over the monitoring period. And again, I can't emphasize enough that this is test data. These numbers are absolutely not correct. But I think it's important for you to see, because this is one of the really important things about monitoring is are our strategies meeting our needs? And then next slide. Again, similar housing BLI data. So this is not accurate, but we will have charts that show what percentage of our buildable lands inventory has been developed. So this is kind of a temperature bar chart. How much has been developed of how much we had at the time that we started our buildable lands inventory. And then it's divided by the different buildable lands inventory categories. So just some examples there so that you can see kind of the breadth, but also the consistency that we're trying to build in. And we'll flip this one over to Mina.
So with all of this, there are lots of limitations and challenges, and we just want to bring those to your attention and acknowledge them. That this is all new. The questions being asked, the data being compiled, it's not been an easy road. We've been diligent and also acknowledge that we will make mistakes. As we talked about, we feel like we've been a phenomenal team. We work incredibly well together, rely on each other for so much, and have been pivotal to the success of the program thus far. But we are a very small team, and we're trying to build today to future-proof our tomorrow, all with limited capacity and working through a tremendous amount of complexity. We've designed a system that accounts for so many of these complexities of existing systems and data, such as the unconnected databases, generalized automated processes, and human error through manual entry, to name a few. But we are aiming to minimize these issues, trying to identify areas we can automate and build in rules to make the system smarter. But errors will still occur and will still require manual entry and review. And even at that, the system can only take us so far, to the point that it gives us data. Data will not tell us the answer. It's merely a tool to aid in making decisions. Next slide. We are focused on making sure the data is high quality so policymakers and the community can have conversations about the policy decisions rather than whether or not the data is correct. We're trying to establish trust and confidence in the numbers so that we can move past that part of the conversation to focus on the key decision points. So with that, I hand it off to Heather.
Yeah, so that's the end of our presentation. I thought it might be helpful to have this graphic up, but we can definitely stop sharing the presentation. You have that graphic in your packet. Yeah, I welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you, Heather. A very interesting. I live a lot in the world of data, so fascinating by that. And the potential for it, I think, is enormous. So thank you for doing that work. Good luck with the project. It's very complicated. And I think, as you pointed out, you know, the best answer is only as good as the question that you start with. So we can give you hundreds of answers, but if they're not what you want, we're not going to get anywhere. So I see Commissioner Taylor in the queue. Go ahead.
I just want to say, sorry, I've got multiple screens, as I said, different devices. So I'll look at the right one. I'm so excited. Congratulations, team. I know you're not, there's a lot more work to do, as you said. I think this is so exciting. I've been, involved in Planning Commission this whole process. So I am so excited about where this is going. And I could tell how complex it is because even following that took a lot of focus, and I still have tons of questions, but I'm not going to ask them right now. I'm just excited to see the evolution, and I appreciate all of your work. And I look forward to hearing more about it as it gets more refined. And yeah, so thank you.
All right, commissioners, who's next? Don't let me let me loose with this. I see Commissioner Fragola. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited and appreciative of this also, and really appreciate the way you linked up some of those loose ends through the components that you had to create that'll allow us to really look at project sites and the development that's happening there. You mentioned having to look at some new assumptions, including HB 2001 and clear and objective. But then I wasn't clear how those assumptions play out in what you're working on. And I was hoping you might address that a little bit. But thank you very much for your work. I look forward to when we get to use this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and it's a great question. It is a little bit challenging to articulate where all of the different things that we're working on might come into the program. So the way I think about it right now is that the first step is to put together a report that is kind of an apples to apples comparison. So what did we assume and envision Eugene? What were those assumptions? How were they done? And then monitoring those assumptions and generally how they were done, only better with best management practices. But just not doing it too differently. Like we are not completely changing our methodologies unless, it made sense to do so. But generally you want to do an apples to apples comparison. And we're not having the policy discussion right now. So some of those code amendments that I mentioned, those are policy decisions that will happen. And they will change our code. And so we will have to determine what the impact will be on our buildable lands inventory based on those code changes. So the example I think of is in Envision Eugene, when we determined we didn't have enough urban growth, we didn't have enough land in our urban growth boundary. So we had to look at efficiency measures. One of the efficiency measures we did was a code amendment. And we increased the minimum density in R2 zones just a little bit. We nudged it up a little bit, and we were able to quantify on average how much additional capacity that gave us on our buildable land, because we were building more densely. We would build more densely. And so any code amendments that result in an increase or a decrease to our land supply will be added on to our urban growth boundary analysis. So we do our apples to apples comparison, and then we say, oh, but we also did these code amendments during the monitoring process. And so we have to factor the impact of those in. And then where are we at with our buildable land supply? If there's any, the reason I put those out further in the UGB analysis is that and not in the growth monitoring report is that I'm not anticipating that we will have those adopted by the time we have a growth monitoring report. So we may not know what the final code amendments are going to be and what we think the impact of those are going to be. It sounds like, based on the timelines that I'm aware of, that those would probably happen after the growth monitoring report. But any code amendments, any Metro Plan amendments that happen as we're doing our monitoring review, we factor those in where we're able to about what the impact is to the buildable lands inventory.
Very good. Commissioner Borowski.
Thank you. And thank you for the report and all the hard work. As somebody who's on the ETAC, I'm a little bit more familiar with this because we've been briefed on it. I don't know how many times, 20. But it's a great process. And a couple of the things that I'm really encouraged by is the data warehousing part of this. You know, in the past, when we were doing Envision Eugene, we were searching for data. The TRG was searching for data, and a lot of our assumptions had to be kind of almost anecdotal. It's like, you know, will this efficiency measure bring this many in? And there was talk of phantom land in the building in the BMI. By having the data warehouse and being able to quantify these numbers, that's going to take a lot of that out of the next time we do any type of urban reserve or urban growth boundary expansion analysis. We'll have a much better non-anecdotal type of a thing. And then the other thing that I think is very exciting is the idea of are our incentives working? You know, we have several incentives to help do efficiencies, things like the MUPD, things like the low-income housing tax credits, and these types of things that we think are working when we hope are working. But with this data, we're going to be able to decide, yes, well, this one is working. It's getting this many houses built, or it's getting this much infill done. And if we see that they're through the data that this efficiency matter isn't working, we can either look for different incentives or do those types of things. So that's what I'm the most excited about, is being able to quantify different things in the past that we weren't able to quantify. We felt that they would get us to where we wanted to go, but there really was no way for us to quantify that. So I'm very excited about it, and thanks for all the hard work.
Well, I'll put myself in the queue a little bit about, I know you had a section there about the qualitative data that you were hoping to gather. And I know when we talk about livability, we talk about things like compatibility, walkable neighborhoods, and traffic perhaps, and parking congestion. And those are not typically data points that we have. I don't see that in any of your data currently, but I'm really hopeful we can get to that, because I think it'll help us as a community understand, well, what do we mean when we talk about a livable community, and what are some, because there are some stuff you could measure, I would think. So it'd be great to to add that to the conversation. I understand the scale we're at now won't allow that right away, but it's certainly exciting opportunity for the future.
Yeah, if I could just comment on that. One of our, the previous incarnation of the Technical Advisory Committee was the Technical Resource Group that they really spent, I think, 900 hours was one calculation on helping us vet data during the Envision Eugene urban growth boundary analysis. And we did have a commissioner on there that said, even any subjective data can be measured. So I have taken that to heart. When we get to that part of the program, that is going to be our challenge. We are going to have to figure out some indicators and agree on those indicators to measure some of those subjective things. I'll be honest, compatibility that's going to be a tough one. You know, I feel much more confident that we can find indicators we can agree about walkability, or at least measuring it. The next thing will be what is the acceptable level of walkability, right? So there's all these tiers that we have to look at. But yeah, I appreciate the question and appreciate the understanding that we don't have a lot of information on that right now.
Well, I look forward to that, certainly. So commissioners, let's, I guess I'll make a last call here. Anyone have any questions for Heather and her team at this point? All right. Well, I don't think our lack of questions reflects our lack of interest. Oh, I see. Commissioner Beeson, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just to I also want to thank all the staff for this. All of this information, this material is interesting to me. I'm looking forward to kind of watching this evolve and learning more about it as it goes. I'm myself very interested in the buildable land supply, and kind of particularly as that begins to interact with impacts from the implementation of HB 2001, which has already been mentioned, just how all that's going to come together. But so I'll have questions as it goes along. I just also wanted to say thank you very much for this. I appreciate it.
And if I can just give a shout out to Commissioners Edwards and Borofsky, we're just, you know, they've been really, the ETAC's been really focused on the Technical Advisory Committee, primarily on urban reserves. But the committee has had to go back and forth in between urban reserves and growth monitoring. And that's challenging because, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to have this committee review the assumptions on both projects because it's so interrelated. And it is a challenge. And now we're going to move into growth monitoring, which is really exciting. So I just really appreciate the Planning Commission having two folks on there. I know one is an official representation, but as with a lot of you, you're wearing multiple hats. And so it's just great to have both of you on there.
All right, very good. I'm going to move us on to agenda item D, items from commission and staff. I see we have about 15 minutes left here. Alyssa, what do you have for us?
I just have a couple of things to jump in on. You may have known, well, I think most of you noticed that Denny Bro was on the meeting. He had to jump off to attend another meeting, and some of you know who he is and some of you don't. So I was gonna introduce him, but I'll do it even though he's gone. And so he is our executive director of the Planning and Development Department. And so that includes planning, community development, building permit services, and admin and parking. And so he's our exec. And I may have said, hey, you should come see a planning commission meeting because he doesn't come very often, obviously. Most of you, you know, newer folks probably haven't seen him. And so I think that was a good one for him to jump in on, and we may be seeing him more. Just wanted to let you know about that. In terms of planning commission meetings, I mentioned your November 10th meeting has been canceled. That item's gonna get bumped out to a later date. So your next meeting isn't until November 23rd. That's the Monday of Thanksgiving week. And that we'll be bringing back Clear and Objective for deliberations starting that day. And then just some council updates tonight. We're going to be taking action on the timeline extension regulation that you had held a hearing on earlier this fall. So we expect that to go smoothly. And then last week, and I think Heather gave you a preview of this, last week council voted on direction for urban reserves, and they said go forward with the 27-year option, which is consistent with both the Planning Commission recommendation and the ETAC recommendation and majority of what we heard from public comment. And on that item, next we'll be going to the Board of Commissioners early next month, and hopefully they give us the same direction. Otherwise, we're gonna have to figure out how to work through that because we need the same direction in order to start the formal adoption process on one option. So that is all I had, unless you guys had any questions for me.
Other items from the staff? Yes, Terry.
I've been waiting this whole time. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, yeah.
I just wanted to mention a couple of meetings this week that are happening on the Middle Housing Project. So we have a Boards and Commissions Roundtable Wednesday evening, and I have down Kristen and Dan attending that event. And then we have a steering committee meeting on Thursday for kicking off the Healthy Democracy work. And I have Commissioners Lisa and Ken attending that one. And then in the evening, we have a local partners roundtable, which I don't believe any of you are going to be at, but it's an exciting week for kicking off some meetings related to the middle housing work.
Very good. It is exciting. All right, other items from the commission itself. Commissioners, anything you would like to report on or share with the rest of us? Okay, so with that, the last thing here is, I believe, to adjourn the meeting, unless there's anything else. Last second hands or anything? All right, terrific. So Alyssa, remind us when we're meeting again. Is it like next month or what?
Yeah, it's November 23rd. So you have a month break. We'll call it your late fall break.
Wow. Okay. The fall break coming our way. There's plenty to do, of course, as Terry mentioned, in other areas, and lots of homework to do. So we'll see you on November 23rd. Take care.
Thank you all.